Hi, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about lab number 5, Buoyancy of a Wooden Block. We are changing this to a Gedanken style lab, and it does mean that you'll have to do this individually now. So ignore the part where it says that the lab is usually 2 to 4 students. It's just going to be a solo lab. Basically, the biggest thing that I want to do is just mention to you a little bit about how the lab is set up so that you understand what it would have looked like if you had been doing it, as well as just telling you how you're going to use the data that's been supplied to you. So if you look in the lab manual at lab number 5, you'll see there's a diagram that shows sort of like this big cylinder. It's filled with water, wooden block, attached to a cable that goes up to something called a force scale. The container for water that we have at the school is like one of those big sort of industrial buckets, the kind you get at like Home Depot or whatever. So it's quite large. It's quite deep. And what we've done is we've put sort of like a little hook thing at the bottom. And when you perform this experiment, you have a wooden block that has a string that comes off of the bottom of it. It's attached to the wooden block. And we take it through the hook at the bottom and then up to where you're holding this force scale. Because the idea is if you pull hard enough on that string, you can get the wooden block to fully submerge underwater. And this is basically what, according to at least legend, Archimedes realized and how he came up with his idea of buoyancy. Because if you pull that wooden block so it's completely underwater, the force of buoyancy acting on it is equal but opposite to the amount of water that it's displaced, the volume of water, the weight of that water. So that's basically the concept that we're using in the background when we're doing the analysis of this lab. So if you were performing this experiment for yourself, you would have pulled up on the force scale, and that pulls the whole string. So you're actually pulling the wooden block down underwater on the other side. And then you could read off of the force scale how much force was needed in order to do that. So what we have to be careful about is even though you're pulling up on the force scale, it's because on the other end for the wooden block, you were pulling down. And you can think of that as being like a force of tension that's happening through the string. In the values that I have supplied to you then, one of the things I've done is said to you that we did this 3 times, 3 trials, and here is the force of tension that you measured off of that force scale on each of those 3 trials. So that's part of the information that I gave you. You'll need that. Also, though, normally there is the pre-lab part of this experiment where what you have to do is take the actual wooden block that you're using and you physically measure its length, width, and height so that you can calculate its true, or at least as good as that can be, volume. And we use that as the accepted value to compare against the volume that you're going to get from doing the experiment. That's the whole point of the lab is we want to say this is the volume of the wooden block that we have measured. This is the volume that we calculated by doing the experiment. How far off are those 2 volumes from each other? So it does mean in the pre-lab part of it, I've also given you the dimensions of the wooden block. So I measured length, width, and height for you. You'll still need to calculate the volume from that and make sure that you're being careful about units. I also told you if you had taken this wooden block and put it on a digital scale, what its mass is. So I measured that for you as well. So basically what you get to do is go ahead and do this lab as though it's a Gedanken, keeping in mind that it is still optional, that we're only asking you to do 5 labs total over the course of the whole semester. So if you choose to not do this lab, that's totally fine. You can just do some of the labs later on. Basically, just like if this was in class, I'm asking that it be submitted online digitally to me. Use the template that's attached so you can type up your lab report there and submit it 1 week after it has been assigned, if you choose to do the lab. If you have any other questions, please send me an email or come visit me on Teams and I'll try to answer it for you. Thanks.